I want you to close your eyes for a second and just imagine your absolute favorite Disney character.
Okay.
Like maybe it's someone classic, right? Like Mickey Mouse or Cinderella or, I don't know, maybe it's Woody from Toy Story.
Right. Got him in my head.
Good. So now I want you to imagine that exact same character, but they are in the middle of a high-stakes tactical shootout.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like they are dodging crossfire, they're checking their remaining ammo, and just desperately fighting their way across this sprawling hostile map, just to reach an extraction point before a timer ticks down to 0.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd. It genuinely sounds like a fever dream. Or, maybe a chaotic fan-made modification you'd find buried deep on some niche gaming message board.
It really does sound like a joke, but it is not a joke. That highly bizarre scenario is actually, it's the very first major project emerging from a massive, highly secretive new corporate collaboration. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a stack of documents, headlined by a very revealing Bloomberg report, along with several official corporate statements. And they detail this unannounced project between Disney and Epic Games, the creators of Fortnite.
And we really have to establish right up front that this isn't just like a casual brand partnership where they slap a logo on a t-shirt.
Right.
We are talking about a staggering $1.5 billion investment from Disney into Epic.
$1.5 billion with a B.
Exactly, with a B.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how that monumental financial injection is actually manifesting. We're going to look at the leaked internal struggles of trying to build this digital universe, the intense friction between these two incredibly different corporate cultures, and ultimately what this tells you and me about the absolute bleeding edge future of entertainment.
It's a fascinating collection of information, honestly, because it strips away all that polished marketing copy we usually get.
Yeah, the PR spin.
Right. We are looking directly at the messy, complicated reality of what happens when a legacy media titan tries to merge its pristine IP with the chaotic, rapid-fire world of modern live service game development.
It really is the perfect mix of pop culture, high-level corporate strategy, and just the gritty reality of how games are made. So, let's jump right into the most immediate and, frankly, most surprising fact from our pile of research. The actual game itself.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this. The Bloomberg leak details the very first interactive experience coming out of this deal, slated for a November release. And it is a shooter.
Yeah.
Specifically, it's a shooter in the vein of a popular game called Arc Raiders.
Right, which, for those who might not follow the granular mechanics of every subgenre in gaming, is what is known as an extraction shooter.
Right.
To understand why this is such a shock, you have to understand how these games function. In an extraction shooter, the goal isn't just to be the last person standing, like in a traditional battle royale.
It's more complicated than that.
Much more. You drop into a highly hostile environment, you gather valuable resources or loot, and you fight off both computer-controlled enemies and other human players.
Yeah.
But the crucial mechanic is that you have to successfully extract.
Meaning escape.
Exactly. Escape with your loot. If you are killed before you reach that extraction point, you lose absolutely everything you gathered during that session. Sometimes you even lose the gear you brought in with you.
See, that is exactly the mechanic I find so baffling. Because the tension in an extraction shooter is notoriously high.
Oh, it's brutal.
Right. It is a stressful, punishing, hardcore genre where players routinely experience genuine adrenaline and frustration. It is the exact opposite of like a relaxing afternoon at the Magic Kingdom or watching a Pixar movie.
Absolutely.
My immediate reaction is that it's quite literally like dropping Cinderella into a tactical war zone. It feels completely dissonant to their brand identity out of all the game genres in the world.
Yeah, platformers, racing games.
Cozy farming simulators. Why on earth would a family-friendly juggernaut like Disney choose a notoriously stressful, high-anxiety genre for their flagship collaboration?
What's fascinating here is that, on the surface, it seems completely counterintuitive. Absolutely. It completely upends our traditional understanding of Disney's brand strategy, which historically prioritizes safety, predictability, and comfort.
Exactly.
But if you look at the underlying economics of the gaming market, it actually makes ruthless sense. This isn't just about putting recognizable smiling faces on a screen. It is about capturing a highly engaged, highly monetizable demographic that Disney is currently struggling to hold on to.
You mean teenagers and young adults who kind of age out of the Disney Channel and move straight into competitive gaming?
Exactly. Disney knows they already have the family-friendly casual market locked down across their physical theme parks and their streaming services.
Right.
But extraction shooters, demand intense focus, repeated play sessions, and they create incredibly sticky player communities. With this massive financial play, Disney is targeting the core, dedicated gaming audience. They want the attention of players who spend hundreds of hours and, critically, hundreds of dollars inside complex digital ecosystems.
Because the stakes in those games are so high, you get invested because you actually have something to lose, which creates a psychological loop that keeps you coming back.
Exactly.
It's a completely different kind of dopamine hit than just, I don't know, watching a movie.
Precisely. And live service games run on that continuous engagement. But capturing that specific magic is incredibly difficult, which is why the Bloomberg report highlights a major stumbling block. The leaks indicate that internal reviews for this November extraction shooter have assessed the project to be, quote, not very original in its current form.
Now, that phrase jumped out at me immediately. Not very original. You do not drop over $1 billion to release something derivative.
You really don't.
I mean, the report does note that staffers are optimistic the game will be in better shape by launch, which I know is a common sentiment in game development. Things often miraculously come together in the final weeks.
They do, it's true.
But not very original hints at a fundamental design issue. It suggests they are just taking an existing popular game mode and slapping a Mickey Mouse skin on it, hoping the brand recognition will carry the weight of the gameplay.
And gamers are incredibly savvy. They will see right through a simple reskin.
Instantly.
But that specific internal anxiety over the game's originality is just the tip of the iceberg here.
Yeah.
Because building a crossover of this magnitude at the quality level Disney expects, it requires a flawless pipeline. And according to the internal documents, that pipeline is buckling under its own weight.
Right, because Epic's immediate response to this pressure wasn't just to put their heads down and polish the first game. The documents reveal a multi-game pipeline that is experiencing severe whiplash.
Right.
They outlined at least 3 distinct games initially planned under this new collaboration. But we have the first game, the extraction shooter, struggling with its identity. Then, an early version of a second game received middling internal reviews.
And then there's third game.
Yes, the most drastic move. The budget for a third, completely separate game was entirely shifted to try and salvage the first 2 projects. The reporting explicitly states that Disney was, quote, disappointed by Epic's release timeline.
That specific phrase, disappointed by Epic's release timeline, is the absolute crux of the issue here. It exposes a massive cultural clash between these 2 corporate entities.
It completely exposes it. I look at this and I see 2 companies speaking entirely different languages. Disney expects a finished script, and Epic is used to writing the script while they are already filming.
That's a great way to put it.
And we see this dynamic play out perfectly in the PR responses. Liz Markman, a spokesperson for Epic Games, pushed back hard against the leaks.
Oh, absolutely.
She stated that the reporting on these unannounced games was, quote, not reflective of the ambitions of the Disney collaboration. And Epic's defense basically boils down to the fact that they simply operate on aggressive development timelines.
Right.
They claim it's entirely normal to regularly move developers around, focusing heavily on projects with approaching releases, while keeping smaller prototyping teams on games that are further out. But I have to ask, where is the line drawn between an aggressive timeline and a company scrambling to appease an incredibly impatient, enormously powerful investor?
Well, to be fair to Epic, what their spokesperson is describing is genuinely the standard reality of game development. Prototyping is inherently chaotic. You have small teams experimenting with ideas, building what they call gray box environments.
Gray box.
Yeah, just the simple geometry to test if a game mechanic is actually fun before you spend millions of dollars making it look pretty. When a game gets closer to launch, you shift massive resources onto it to get it across the finish line. It is not a clean, linear, predictable process.
I understand that's standard for the gaming industry, but it feels incredibly contradictory to me that Disney drops $1.5 billion and Epic's immediate reality is shuffling budgets and delaying games. Disney's entire history is built on meticulously scheduled, highly polished, global theatrical releases.
Exactly.
I mean, they announce a Marvel movie slate 5 years in advance, and they hit those dates. They expect a smooth, predictable machine.
And Epic is operating a fluid, reactive, constantly patching live service ecosystem. You've hit on the core tension. You have a legacy media giant demanding a rigid timeline colliding with a software company used to agile iterative development.
It's a recipe for disaster.
And you can see Disney trying to smooth over this friction in their own public statement. The Disney spokesperson didn't engage with the specific delays or the budget shifts at all.
Love it all.
Instead, they pivoted entirely to the macro view, stating they are focused on a long-term collaboration with Epic to build a transformational games and entertainment universe.
Which is a brilliant PR pivot, honestly. Universe building sounds incredibly prestigious to investors. It signals that they aren't just making a couple of video games, they are building a foundational platform. It asks the market to look past a bumpy November release and focus on a systemic, decade-long shift.
It is effective messaging. But building that transformational universe at Epic's aggressive pace requires an immense amount of human labor. And when a legacy studio like Disney demands a tighter timeline and higher fidelity, that pressure immediately rolls downhill onto the people actually writing the code and building the 3D models.
Yeah, the actual developers.
Right. Universe building rarely happens on a smooth schedule, and it almost always extracts a heavy toll from the workforce.
Which brings us to a stark, very tangible reality highlighted in the Bloomberg report. Because these grand ambitions don't just exist on a whiteboard in a boardroom, Epic Games recently went through a massive round of layoffs, cutting over 1,000 employees. And the reporting explicitly confirms that this downsizing included people who were working on these very unannounced Disney games.
It's awful.
Former developers cited an unrealistic schedule, and multiple current and former staff believe this relentless pace played a significant part in the massive downsizing decision.
It is a sobering detail that forces us to confront the human element, often obscured by these massive financial figures.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It presents a glaring paradox that I really struggle to wrap my head around. How does a company receive a $1.5 billion financial injection, an unimaginable amount of runway, and simultaneously lay off over 1,000 people,
Right.
including the very developers working on the Disney projects that the money is supposedly funding? As an outsider, it looks like a complete failure of management. If you have the money, why are you firing the people doing the work?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a harsh truth about how capital functions in the modern technology and gaming sectors.
Okay, how so?
Well, a massive capital injection of that size is not a grant used simply to maintain the status quo or to comfortably pay existing salaries so people can take their time prototyping. It is an investment demanding massive exponential returns, and it comes with entirely new mandates. Historically, massive capital investments almost always trigger intense, sometimes brutal corporate restructuring.
So you're saying the $1.5 billion didn't buy stability, it bought a sudden aggressive pivot.
Precisely. The mandate changed overnight. Epic's leadership likely looked at their entire organizational chart and realized that building a transformational universe on Disney's strict timeline required a very different structure than what they currently have.
Wow.
They decided which specific skill sets were required for this new, rigorous phase of development and ruthlessly cut anything or anyone that didn't perfectly align with that new mandate, even if those people were already working on early experimental iterations of the Disney project.
Which perfectly contextualizes why the remaining developers are citing unrealistic schedules. They are essentially trying to force a messy, organic creative process into the rigid framework demanded by a massive corporate investment. And when you do that, the human engine required to power that process starts to break down. We hear so much about crunch culture in gaming. You know, the expectation of 80-hour work weeks just to hit a release date. This seems like a textbook recipe for that exact scenario.
It is. As consumers, we enjoy the final product, these massive, seamless, endlessly entertaining digital worlds. But it is vital to remember that the infrastructure of those worlds is built by human beings who are often subjected to intense pressure, shifting corporate priorities, and the constant threat of restructuring, regardless of how much money is flowing into the top of the company.
So let's zoom out and look at the ultimate endgame here. Because if the first game is currently drawing not very original reviews internally, and if the development timelines are causing massive cultural friction between the two companies,
and if the human cost is resulting in over 1,000 layoffs?
Exactly. Why are Disney and Epic pushing so incredibly hard? Why weather all this bad press and internal chaos? The documents suggest it's because the ultimate goal isn't just an extraction shooter. That game is merely the first proof of concept for a complete, unprecedented merging of their two empires.
To understand where this is truly heading, we have to look past the November release and examine the deep existing integration between Disney and Epic that the research outlines.
Exactly. Fortnite was basically serving as a digital landlord for Disney's IP for years before this investment. You already have a massive roster of Disney properties inside the game. There are Star Wars characters, Marvel heroes, and as of an April 10th update mentioned in the research, Toy Story characters have entered the ecosystem.
Right, they're everywhere.
But with this new deal, Disney isn't just renting an apartment anymore. They are buying out the zoning rights to the entire neighborhood. Fortnite now actually allows players to build whatever Star Wars games they want, utilizing official Star Wars assets, locations, weapons, voice lines, and music.
That detail cannot be overstated. It is a fundamental paradigm shift. Disney is historically one of the most fiercely protective companies on the planet regarding its intellectual property.
Oh, absolutely. They sue everyone.
Right. They control every pixel of how Mickey Mouse or Darth Vader is presented. The fact that they are handing the keys to the Star Wars kingdom over to individual, everyday Fortnite players to create their own custom games shows an unprecedented level of trust in Epic's underlying platform.
And what's fascinating is that the technology transfer goes both ways.
Right.
It's not just Disney IP living inside Epic's video game. It is Epic's proprietary technology running Disney's core television and film business.
Yes.
The documents detail how Disney's Lucasfilm utilizes Epic's Unreal Engine, the exact same software architecture that runs Fortnite, to actually film major television productions like The Mandalorian.
This cross-pollination is the technical mechanism that makes the $1.5 billion investment make sense. For those unfamiliar, Unreal Engine is used in Hollywood for something called virtual production. Instead of building physical sets or using green screens that have to be replaced later, they surround the actors with massive high-definition LED walls.
Like a giant dome of screens.
Exactly. Those walls display incredibly realistic 3D environments, like an alien planet or a spaceship interior, that are rendered in real time by the Unreal Engine.
So when the camera moves, the digital background moves with it, creating perfect perspective and lighting on the physical actors.
Exactly. But here's the critical part for this deep dive. The digital assets created for those television shows, the 3D models of the spaceships, the textures of the alien landscapes, they already exist within the Unreal Engine ecosystem, which means they can, theoretically, be ported directly into Fortnite with incredible ease.
Wow.
The same digital architecture is powering the video games you play and the television shows you watch.
That completely blows my mind. The pipeline isn't just shared corporate strategy, it's shared software infrastructure, which perfectly sets up the ultimate vision outlined by Disney's new CEO, Josh D'Amaro. He is looking at all this technological integration and thinking much, much bigger than just video games.
Way bigger.
According to the research, D'Amaro envisions a near future where Fortnite could actually play host to official Disney movie premieres. Even wilder, he suggested it could become a primary commerce platform, a place for players to buy real-world Disney Cruise Line tickets or theme park passes while inside the game.
It's an ambitious vision that reframes entirely what a video game actually is. D'Amaro understands that the next generation of consumers doesn't compartmentalize digital and physical experiences the way older generations do.
Right, it's all just life to them.
Exactly. If a teenager is spending 4 hours a day socializing, competing, and consuming media inside the Fortnite ecosystem, then Fortnite is no longer just a game to them. It is their primary social plaza. And from a corporate perspective, that means Fortnite is exactly where Disney needs to build its next theme park.
My mind immediately goes to the concept of a digital Disneyland. You aren't just logging in to shoot at other players, you are logging in to hang out, watch a movie trailer, buy a physical vacation, and then maybe play an extraction shooter with your friends.
Yeah.
And with D'Amaro's noted love of the gaming industry and this incredibly deep structural integration between the two companies, the reporting highlights a massive rumor that has been swirling around Wall Street. Could Disney just buy Epic Games outright?
It's a big question.
I mean, their history dictates it. They bought Marvel, they bought Lucasfilm, they bought Fox. Swallowing Epic Games seems like the logical conclusion to this entire story.
It is a highly compelling theory, and it aligns perfectly with Disney's historical acquisition strategy. However, the documents point out a massive structural roadblock to a total buyout.
The CEO, right.
Right. Epic CEO Tim Sweeney owns a controlling majority interest in the company. Epic is not a publicly traded entity where Disney could simply execute a hostile takeover by buying up stock on the open market. Tim Sweeney would have to personally sign off on the sale.
And from everything I've read about Sweeney, he is fiercely protective of his company's independence. He doesn't strike me as someone looking to cash out and hand over the keys to a traditional media conglomerate.
You are absolutely correct. Sweeney has a very specific, deeply held vision for the future of the internet, often referred to as the metaverse. And he has tightly controlled Epic for decades to execute that specific vision on his own terms.
Makes sense.
But even without a full corporate buyout, what we are watching unfold right now is the real-time collision of physical and digital commerce, facilitated by two companies intertwining their financial and technological futures.
So let's recap the journey we've just been on for you, the listener. We started with the incredibly jarring image of beloved Disney characters engaged in a high-stakes, highly stressful extraction shooter.
Right.
We uncovered the intense corporate friction, the radical budget shifts, and the tragic reality of mass layoffs occurring behind the scenes as these two different cultures collide. And finally, we zoomed out to see that all of this chaos is essentially the turbulent birthing process of a $1.5 billion blueprint for a unified digital and physical ecosystem.
It is a critical story to follow because this is the blueprint for the next major iteration of the consumer internet. Whether you consider yourself a hardcore gamer, a diehard Disney fan, or just someone who occasionally shops online, the traditional boundaries between entertainment, interactive media, and digital commerce are being permanently erased by these two corporate titans.
It is all blending into one seamless experience. The software used to shoot the blockbuster TV show is the exact same software running the game, which is the exact same platform where you might soon purchase your physical family vacation.
Which leaves us with an important underlying question. If a digital universe, like the one Disney and Epic are currently pouring billions of dollars and thousands of human hours into building Billingport, becomes the primary portal where we interact with brands.
Right.
If we truly reach a point where you might buy real-world cruise tickets for your family in the exact same digital lobby where you are holding a virtual blaster, at what point does this stop being a video game and simply become the new, inescapable infrastructure of the internet itself?
That is a phenomenal, somewhat intimidating thought to leave on. The metaverse isn't arriving in a clunky VR headset. It's arriving as Cinderella fighting for an extraction point while trying to sell you a vacation. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the media you consume, and we will catch you next time.